All right, so let's look at a technique that we can use to make the intersecting planes drawing that we require for this assignment. Now, this is a special type of drawing that's going to link the taxonomy that you've already made, which as a reminder was all this stuff, to the planes that you use to cut them. So this way that ties them back to the original object, so you can see where on the object all of this stuff lies. From the very beginning, let's go ahead and just turn this cut plane stuff off. You can see that this is a pretty confusing drawing because we can't really see much of the original objects because we've cut it in a lot of places and there's just a lot of stuff in the way. So what we're going to do is a combination of a render and line drawing using multiple display styles that help us to show the maximum amount of information in the clearest possible way. So before we get started, let's make sure we have a good view of this object. Try to pick one in a relatively, not super too high angle, but not too low either. You want something where you don't look at any of these fins kind of in a way where they're kind of too straight on. You kind of want everything at a good angle where you can see a lot of the object and also a lot of the planes and their geometry. So they shouldn't get too skinny or too flat. And then to save that view, you can go to View, and then Set View, Named Views, and then create one. I've already made one. It's called here. This way I can always recall the exact same view, and that's going to be important because we might need to have a couple of things that line up perfectly. So first things first, let's go ahead and change this so that our planes are easier to see through. Now the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to go to my Layers panel, and because my planes are all on one layer, which I can see here, this guy right here, I can go over and I can take a look at the material that's assigned to this layer. Right now, everything has just kind of the default material assigned to it, and the way I can see material is not in the shaded view, which I'm in now, but if I go down here to the render view, which is right there, then this is going to show me what that material looks like, or what this model looks like with materials assigned to it. You can see everything right now is just kind of marshmallow white stuff. That's just the default material. But maybe if I change these planes to something that's got some transparency to it, I might be able to get my original model a little more clearly shown. So let's go ahead and change the material here by clicking on this and changing this from default material to something else. Now it's going to give us a bunch of different options. I went ahead and made another one. You can just do this by saying plus and pick something else. Plastic is a good bet here. And maybe I'm going to say that the transparency is something. And then the clarity is pretty high. And this should give us something that I can see through a little bit better. Okay, so that's a good start. That's actually pretty, let's just start there. Okay, now you can see that I get a good sense of where the planes kind of are, but things get a little bit confusing because like the transparent planes they're easy to see the borders of, but when things start getting stacked up, then that gets pretty hard. It's actually hard to see where the planes, or at least most of them, contact the object. So maybe we need to add some section lines that clearly indicate where the planes not only are in space or relative to the object, but where the intersections actually happen. And a command that works really well for this is intersect two sets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at my layers panel here maybe a little more closely, and I'm going to use intersect two sets right here. And my first set of objects is going to be all my solids, which is just my model. Solids, select objects. That's my first set. Let's say done. Okay, now it's going to ask me to select a second set. Let's make that my planes. So that's going to be select objects, done. And let's ask it to calculate all the intersections between that stuff. And you can see now that suddenly we've got all these kind of section lines that are happening there. And that's pretty helpful. I might be able to kind of bump those up a little bit later in Illustrator, or maybe what I want to do is just so that I can see them a little bit better, I'll go back to this plastic material and maybe I'll make it a little bit more transparent. And I can start to see those section lines and intersections just a little bit better. There we go. That's maybe a little too much. So you're going to fine tune this, and you can experiment with different materials, different levels of clarity, different levels of reflectivity, different colors. You can do all sorts of different stuff to add both clarity and style to this drawing, but that's probably a pretty good start. But before I go any further, I've just had a thought. What I might want to do is to be able to manipulate these section lines independently later when I kind of mess with the line work for this thing, because I might want to bump them up, because it's usually really helpful to show a section line in a different line weight than just a regular curve on an object. So what I'm going to do is really quickly make a new layer, and I'm going to call it section lines. Sorry, my keyboard is half broken on this computer, so it's very hard to type. All right, cool. Section lines, cool. And what I'm going to do is say select curves, because the only curves in this object right now are just the curves that I've made, because I've already cleaned it up beforehand. So it's really easy for me to just grab these sections. If that doesn't work, you can just use select last if you haven't done anything else since that command. Otherwise, you might have to do a little bit of cleanup. But this is, if your model is clean, this is really easy. So take those section lines that you just made and put them on their own layer. Just in case, because I think that might be really helpful for later. So grab those section lines, open the properties, move them to the section lines layer. And let's say that's done. Now I think there's something else that we might want to do to add some graphic clarity. I think maybe showing the borders around these curves might also be nice, or around the planes might also be nice. So maybe what I'll do is I'll grab these planes, select objects, and I'm going to say duplicate border. I think that looks really nice. So maybe I'll take that, select that stuff, and I'll make a new layer, and I'll say, let's see, plane borders, and I will just move all that stuff to the plane borders layer. Sure. And then maybe just, to make these stand out a little more, I'll make these some other color just to help me stay organized. Okay, cool. Okay, and let's go ahead and change the color on this layer too, because this might be helpful when we manipulate it in Illustrator later. Now let's export the line work. So let's go back to the layers, and then let's turn off, let's go ahead and let's grab the plane borders, and let's grab the section lines, and let's turn off the planes, because we don't really care about the planes themselves. We just want all this stuff. And let's go ahead and grab all of this, and then let's do a make 2D. Let's see what we got. Okay, cool. So this is going to be pretty helpful, I think, because what's really nice about this is this has preserved the colors from the original layers. So this is going to be really easy to select in Illustrator and to create new layers from where we can easily move all of the red stuff to one layer, all the blue stuff to one layer, and all the black stuff to another layer, and manipulate those line weights independently. So this looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and let's grab all this, and let's say File, Export Selected, and let's call this, make sure you change this to an Illustrator format, and let's just call this torch line work for inserted planes. Okay, cool. Maybe that's all spelled right. Who knows? Export. And then let's preserve this model scale, because this right now is actual size, which is a pretty good size for a board. Export. All right, let's check it out in Illustrator. Okay, here we are in Illustrator. Let's open this drawing and open it up. Okie dokes. Let's do an Option or Control 0 just to get to 100% zoom. Let's zoom out just a little bit. I don't know how big this artboard is now, but what I do want is to not change the size of this just yet, because it is the actual size, and I'm just going to leave it like that for now. So maybe I'll go ahead and update the artboard just so it's something. For now, I'm just going to say fit it to the artwork bounds, and let's just start there. No, that's not very good. Let's go ahead and say 30, 24 by 36. Sure, let's start with that. Okay, cool. So we've got this. Let's go ahead and set this file up so it's more useful for us. Right now, you can see when it exported from Rhino, it just dumped all this Make2D stuff on one layer, and that's not really what we want. But this is actually really easy to fix because of the way that it preserved all these stroke colors. So let's make ourselves some new layers. Let's just say something like intersections, and another one called plane boundaries, plane bounds, whatever. And then let's just do something like another one that's something called model line work. And that one I think is probably going to be maybe underneath the intersections, but it's not really going to matter that much. Okay, so with these, what I can do is these colors, by the way, here have nothing to do with anything in this drawing. They just, some of them happen to match up. This is just the colors that it randomly assigns. It's just a coincidence that some of these are the same colors. Don't read too much into it, but what I am going to do is move these this line work to a bunch of these different layers so I can more easily control it, because having it just all loose down here isn't helpful. This is really easy. So if I zoom into this a little bit, then see how all these model layer colors were preserved. It's really easy to select something that's blue and say, hey, select all the stuff that's the same stroke color. And then let's go ahead and see now that all that's selected. What I can now do is take this square, which indicates there's selected stuff on that layer, and say, hey, everything that's selected, move it from this layer to, that was the plane bounds, right? Let's move it to the plane bounds layer. And just to keep track of the stuff, I like to just turn it off after I've moved it to see what I've got left. Okay, let's do it again. Red stuff. Red stuff is all the intersections. Select it, say same stroke color. Cool, let's move that to the intersections layer, which coincidentally is also red. Turn it off. Everything else is just this black stuff. I don't even need to do a same selection because it's just the only thing left. Select all of this and let's turn that to model line work. Great, now there shouldn't really be anything left on this Make2D layer, and I can see that there's not, it's just empty. I'm just gonna turn it off because it doesn't do anything anymore. So now everything that's left is on these layers here. Cool. Now, let's just go ahead and leave these alone for now, and let's go ahead and import our render. Okay, so to bring in my render, maybe I'll go ahead and make a new layer, and I'm gonna put it under all this stuff, and select it, and say File, Place, and let's go find that thing that we made, that render. Torch render, that was it. Torchrender.png. What a name. Okay, cool. So that's just gonna dump it down there somewhere. And as you can see, it's generously sized, probably exactly 4 times as big as it was on the screen. So let's just take an educated guess, because remember when we did that view capture to file, we did it with the same view as those curves. And let's go ahead and we scaled it up by 4. So let's see what happens if we just transform it down by 25%. Not quite right, but that's okay. We can make it fit. So let's go ahead and let's make this fit. I'm gonna take this guy, I'm gonna drag him around a little bit, and let's just kind of eyeball it to get it close. Whoa, what are you doing here? All right, cool. And it's gonna look really bad for a minute. Now remember, when you are in Illustrator, you need to hold down Shift to constrain proportions. Photoshop does that automatically for you. Illustrator does not. Let's go ahead and let's use these planes to get kind of aligned a little bit. So let's line up a corner, and that's looking pretty close. Let's just start there. If I zoom out, I can see that I'm not quite there yet. I need to come down a little bit. So with that picture still selected right there, I'm going to scale it which is this button down here. I think the shortcut is, oh, it's S. I was thinking it was RE. Never mind. Cool, so this is it. So let's go ahead and click that button and say, hey, the scale point is going to be, start with this anchor, and then go from there to there. Nope, that didn't work. Let's try it again. I'm going to hold down Shift while I do it to that anchor point. There we go. That was what it wanted. Just a little shift. Okay, cool. So if I look at this, I would say those drawings line up. Now, let's get on with the business of making them look a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and let's tweak our line work a little bit. So with that layer, it's good. I can go ahead and just probably say enter there. Maybe not, because I don't need to say anything. Okay, keep thinking it's Photoshop. So model line work. Let's go ahead and let's make it black. Cool. Let's go to our, so by clicking on this little ball here, I can select everything on that layer and I can quickly change things. So right now the stroke is already black. So let's go ahead and let's take it down to something smaller. That might be too small. Select it again. Let's just start there. All right, now let's select the intersections. Let's go ahead and just make those, let's leave those red for now, just for the heck of it. Plane bounds, let's go ahead and select those. Let's change those to black also. And let's take those down to a smaller weight, and let's see how those look. That's looking pretty legible, actually. So this is a, now you could, of course, do all sorts of different things and try all sorts of different styles and do whatever you need to do to make this look good. I would probably, let's change these intersections here from red to black. Again, how you show your stuff is up to you. Oh, I didn't mess it up. All right, grab these, select all this, stroke, black. Let's come down just a little bit, see how that looks. Okay, that is, I like that kind of a lot. Let's maybe just bump this up a little bit. Again, there's no magic stroke weight. It's going to depend on how big your stuff is, how big your file is. Okay, now let's do a Control A. Let's select everything and let's go ahead and copy it. And maybe if we've got this cool taxonomy drawing and I paste it in here, what's cool is this is all going to be, it should all be at approximately the same scale, or exactly the same scale. Actually, it's going to look shorter because we're looking at this at an angle, but this should be 1-to-1 because of the way that we set our files up. So now what this does is that we can combine these two drawings together and we can create a sort of a key where we can then indicate where all of these sections came from if we reorganize these axonometric, or sorry, if we reorganize all these figure ground drawings and connect them either with text or line to where they came from in this drawing. And then after you mess around for a while, you might end up with something like this, which is a rearrangement of these figure ground sections tied to your axonometric key drawing with a link showing where each of these figure ground sections is linked to the section plane that cut it.